I'm Mr. Rozanski, and that was a pretty darn successful first week for never having made video lessons, and you guys for never having done online school, or maybe you have, I don't know your background. But very nice job, and I want to thank you a bunch for reaching out to me if you had questions, submitting the stuff that had to be submitted, and overall just doing your best. I appreciate it. We are continuing with passive voice today. We did a little bit of foundational identification with building blocks and then seeing if it was passive or active voice. And now we're going to use our skills to deal with something that's a little bit more on the creation side of things, turning active to passive and then passive to active. And then eventually we'll get to the true creation of our own passive voice sentences. All in the simple aspect, which is kind of how this activity is organized, different aspects at different times, because each one might have a layer of complexity that we don't understand. To accomplish this task, we will look at one sentence at a time, find the verb first, and that's created. When converting from active to passive voice, that verb has to turn into its past participle form. So with something like created already is the past participle form. It's both the simple past and the past participle. So we will leave it as is. A foundational element of passive voice is the insertion of a form of to be. So what I'm going to do right now is throw in a form of to be. Now, to do is would be wrong. To do are would be wrong, obviously, but for number purposes. To do is would be wrong because the original sentence was in the simple past. So when we transfer it into passive voice, we have to maintain its pastness. So the correct form would be was. Now, very simple. What was the object? What was after the verb becomes the subject. And then what was the subject comes after the verb, after a preposition. Our preposition of the day that we talked about, or the week, I guess, of the month, the year, this entire existence, is going to be by something. And that is the process to convert the simple past active voice into simple past passive voice. On to the next sentence. Once again, I'm going to start with the verb. I need to turn it into its past participle form. Then I saw its time, and my initial impression is to just put is, because that is the simple present, contains is the simple present. So it looks to be that I have the verb as I want. Like last time, I went to the object of the verb, and I took him and I made him my subject. I made him at the start of my sentence. Different societies. This is where we run into something that's weird. In active voice, since our subject was singular, our verb was singular, but when we've converted it into passive voice, since we have a different subject, even though the exact same concept is being presented, we have to do some finagling. We have to change our is, which is the simple present singular, to are, simple present plural. And now everything's fine, just like the last time. I'm going to just immediately type in my by, because I need my by phrase, my agent or my doer by phrase, and then I'm going to replace it, or I'm going to place in the old subject. And there's the second sentence. Societies are unique. We're going to stop here because we have a form of to be, and there's a lot of weirdness here. And the thing after the form of to be, our verb, it's not a transitive verb. It's not giving action to something else. So a sentence like this one, while first you might get gung-ho and insert something like is being unique. I guess if we were to just plug in what it's going to be, it'd be unique is been by society. But that don't make no sense. That doesn't make any sense because active voice only applies to sentences in which the verb is transitive, transferring something to something. This is not one of those cases. Are is just describing a state, and that's why we have something after it that's renaming a quality of the first one. So don't type in unique is being by society. Does not exist. Because not all sentences can we do this game with. We have to know when we can and know when we can't. The last three sentences were all in the simple aspect, which is very simple to do it with and to identify the adjustment from active to passive. Now we're going to move to the perfect aspect, which is still pretty easy. With the transition from simple to perfect aspect, we have to look at more verbs. In the previous few sentences, we could just go to one verb and say, hey, this is our guy that we have to play with. But now we have a little bit more going on. This separated are the verbs working together. You have to keep your to be verbs and to have verbs in mind. So darn popular, helping verbs, auxiliary verbs, they're going to be paired with something sometimes. And I know this is paired with separated simply because there's an ed. So had separated seems to me a verb that I have to transfer into passive voice. This is going to be very simple. I already have a past participle, so I need to add a form of to be. What you have to do is just think, have you ever heard been had separated before? You use your innate abilities with the English language to help you out as much as possible. Had been separated fits great. The had stays at the start, the to be goes after it, and my past participle, which was a past participle in the original active voice sentence, kind of stays the same. So, just like the old task, I take the object of the verb, unique societies, throw him at the start and hit it with a capital letter because why not get it right? Unique societies had been separated. You know that by is where we're living, and we can just fill in the rest of the sentence. The old subject becomes the object of the preposition, and then the entire prepositional phrase goes after our verb phrase. Has is a form of to have, one of our helping verbs, so we should put it down. United jumps forward. Now, just like last time, I've never heard of a bean has united, so I know my helping verb, my form of to be that is going to be my important signal of passive voice is going to go between the has and the united. So has been united. Now I take what was after the verb phrase and I put it at the start. Hit it with a capital letter because why not? I keep hitting spacebar after. What a faux pas. Problem has arisen. With the previous sentence, we didn't have to change anything because both singular and plural things take had in the past, but that's not the case with the present. We have to have breaking down into to have. Nope, we have to have breaking down into has and have in the simple present. So since my subject societies is plural, I have to change has to have. Different societies have been united by phrase the internet. And then the sixth one. Society will have met new pleasures as a result of the internet. This is weird because I've tacked on more. I have a prepositional phrase and another prepositional phrase here at the end. So let's just ground ourselves with the verb phrase. Will have met. Future perfect aspect is what we have going on here. We have to insert a form of to be here. So what we could do is will been have met, doesn't make any sense. Will have met been doesn't make any sense, but we can have will have been met is something that's going to work. We see that it goes before the form of to have and the past participle in all of these instances with the perfect aspect. Now, in terms of moving things to the subject spot, you have to consider how is this prepositional phrase functioning as adjective or as an adverb, because if it's an adjective it's going to come with it. But would it sound right to say new pleasures as a result of the internet will have been met by society? Or we have the opportunity to just move new pleasures to the start into the subject position. New pleasures will have been met by society, and then the prepositional phrase can stay. So you do whatever sounds best to you. Just know sometimes it's going to stay, the prepositional phrase, and sometimes it will go with it. Now we are moving from the perfect aspect to the progressive aspect, and then a little funky one at the end. I think the transition from the active to passive with perfect is a lot easier than active to passive with progressive, because what you're going to see is a lot of stuff has to happen. If we just immediately isolate our verb phrase, and this time we're not looking for forms of to have and past participles, we're looking for forms of to be and present participles to copy as our verb phrase. Now right here we see some weirdness happen because we can't just leave the past participle as the past participle because we don't have a past participle. We don't have one, we have a present participle. So traveling is going to have to change to traveled. Now we don't insert were be traveled. To be doesn't go in its bare infinitive form, and it doesn't go into its past participle form, because that stuff just doesn't sound right to us. The form of to be is what carries the progressive aspect. Were being traveled is what happens. So with the progressive aspect, when you put in to be, you put in to be in its present participle form. Were being traveled is what it ends up with. So we'll switch how we're doing this. The subject in active voice becomes the object of a prepositional phrase in passive voice, and we take the object of the verb in active voice and we put it as the subject in passive voice. As you type it, you should realize that the subject is singular, our original verb is plural, so we make a simple swap right there. Once again, we're finding our form of to be. We're looking for a present participle. We're putting in the form of to be to carry the progressive aspect. The present participle changes to the past participle, the old subject goes in a prepositional phrase, and the object of the verb in active voice becomes the subject in passive voice. The virus is being lodged by the world. Probably forgot a few periods throughout this, but that's okay. Forgive me, and I'll forgive you. This one's going to be so darn funky. Let's just start with what we know is going to happen. Human beings will, and then stuff's going to happen that's weird by the virus. So what has to happen is will be stays, because we need that for the future aspect of things. Then we need a form of to be to represent the progressive aspect of things. Then we have to form the verb that's carrying all of our action in its past participle form, met. Human beings will be being met by the virus. That sounds really darn funky, but you can just trust me that that's right. The will be carries the future, the being carries the progressive, and then we have the met, because that's the guy that we want to be doing everything. The final sentence, probably not true, but you can save your own world by sticking inside into safe quarantine land. You can save the world. Let's just do this one a little bit organically. The world can, that's our modal verb. The modal verb resets the verb after into its bare infinitive form. That's why right here we have save. To save is our infinitive, save is our bare infinitive. So we are going to insert the form of to be in its bare infinitive form, because can is telling be to be in its bare infinitive form. The world can be, we need our verb in its past participle form. The world can be saved by, oh, let's just make, we should have done this, but I'm not redoing it. Boom. How about that? With like 12 of those. And that's converting stuff from passive or from active voice to passive voice.